Hi, David. Well, now you're connected. Good morning.
Good morning or good afternoon.
No, it's still morning. 2 more minutes.
Oh, okay. I'm at work, so I'm going to see how long it takes them to realize I'm using their work resources to learn.
Oh, okay. Well, that's terrible.
I
Why
work
should
in,
one want to expand one's mind?
well, I work for the land of no, so it is what it is.
Yep.
I had to steal one of the kifas kifa or kifa that Sophia had
Kippot,
in her.
the Hebrew. The
Can you
plural
please?
is singular is kippah. The
Kippah.
plural is kippot.
Okay, so I stole one of her kippah,
Okay.
which does not look very good on me.
So I'm just looking at some Israeli news.
No problem. I hope others will join in. I really wouldn't have much to offer the conversation today.
Yeah, no, I think people are just moving slowly. I know Shell, who normally makes it, probably won't because of this period. He's helping older citizens with their tax returns. Uh,
Oh,
so Rabbi Zucker, it depends a great deal on his schedule, and also Susie Weiner, who's occasionally is on. Um, Again, she had been in Florida for a while. I don't know if I assume she's back, but I
yeah,
don't know for sure. And it's depends on her schedule. I mean, you probably haven't met her yet because she moved away. I mean, not far. She's still in New Jersey, but
yeah.
she moved away before you came. A long, long time member. And she used to organize all the tour readings. Amazing family, amazing family.
Yeah.
Anyway, here,
I know my attendance will be spotty with work because a lot of times they'll give me depositions around this time. So, but
yeah.
I'll take advantage of the opportunity when I can.
Yeah, well, that's it. People can make it when they can, and most people are pretty good, but can't always. We don't have control, especially over doctor's appointments, trips, etc. Hi, Maddie.
Good afternoon,
Oh,
all.
hello, everybody. Sorry, we got Carol and Yehudi and Rabbi Zucker. Good to see everybody.
I'm just muting myself because I'm eating lunch and I'm making noise.
Okay, B'tevon.
Amash.
I'm allowed to eat lunch during this. I just wolfed something down beforehand. I did
Oh,
not know that.
no, it's all right. Because you can always mute yourself. It's not going to bother anybody. Although you do have to share.
Took a second for that to sink in.
Yeah. Um, all right. It's 12:01. So we're going to get started because I know Shell, let's see. No, no, wait a minute. How do I unshare something? Sorry, one moment. Just, there we go. Um, Sorry, it's just hard to get to all of the controls um,
I understand.
when these things are popping up on my screen. I wanted. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Okay. So this week, first of all, again, shalom kol echad. This week we have a special haftarah. Even though we are reading Parashat Truma, we are now into the period of the four special parshiot, the four special portions that precede Pesach. Um, Three of them have to deal with Pesach itself, and The other one actually deals with Purim, as we'll talk about when we get to it. So first of all, just a little bit of background on these special parshiot to know kind of where they come from. And in fact, they're pretty well ensconced in our tradition for a long time. So we're going to begin with some rabbinic materials before we look at the Haftarah itself. Who would like to read? This is from Mishnah Megillah, although Megillah deals predominantly with, well, I wouldn't say predominantly with the Megillah itself, the reading of Megillat Esther on Purim, to deal a lot with it. It nonetheless also is very, very important for all of the materials it has about the practice of Torah reading and what goes on in the synagogue. And here we see some of that material. It's connected because it's talking about Rosh Chodesh Adar, the new month of Adar, in which Purim falls, but nonetheless, it deals with other issues as well. So do we have a volunteer to read?
I'll read.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
When Rosh Chodesh Adar occurs on Shabbat, we read the portion of Shkalim. If it occurs during the week, we advance it to the previous Shabbat, and they interrupt the reading of the Arba Parshivot.
Parshiot.
Yes, there's a V in there. Okay. On
No,
the
that's a line.
Shabbat, yeah. On the second
Yeah, so
Shabbat,
before we go any further, so first of all, when Rosh Chodesh Adar occurs on Shabbat, we add the portion of Shkalim. Actually, we not only add the portion of Shkalim, we also add the portion of Rosh Chodesh. So this Shabbat, we have the rare opportunity of reading from 3 Sifrei Torah. As I always tell the story, the night before my interview at the seminary, I'm staying with friends and, they're asking me questions and, telling me what to expect. And one of them says, when do you take out 3 Sifrei Torah? My first answer actually was on a Parashata, I think. May have been on the Parashata Chodesh, which falls on Rosh Chodesh. It's one of the 4 special Parshiot before Pesach. We read the Rosh Chodesh, the regular Parasha, and Parashat HaChodesh. Also, if Rosh Chodesh Chanukah falls on Shabbat, we read the regular Parasha, Rosh Chodesh, and the Maftir for Chanukah, and the Shabbat that we have this year, where we will read the regular Parasha of Terumah, and the 7th Aliyah will be the Rosh Chodesh reading, and Parashat Shkalim will be the Maftir. Now, first of all, how do we know we should be reading the Parashat of Shkalim? Let's take a look. We have to look at another Mishnah. Actually, the Mishnah dealing with the laws of Shkalim. Could you read?
we read there in Shkalim. On the first of Adar, they make
No. First of all, see Mishnah Shkalim first, the
okay.
beginning of the footnote.
Announcement concerning the collection.
Yeah, on the first of Adar. Yeah, B'achad b'Adar mashmi'in al Shkalim. On the first of Adar, they make a public announcement concerning the collection of half shekels. Now, so okay, that's good, but now why? And the Gemara explains. Go on.
Okay. Yeah, this is small.
Yeah,
we
no,
learned there. No, it's my phone. I'm doing it on my phone. We learned there Shekalim, 1:1. On the first of Adar, they make a public announcement concerning the collection of half shekels.
Yeah, because you remember it's really a machzit shekel, a half a shekel. And now here's the Gemara.
Said Rav Tavi, said Rav Yoshivya.
Yoshia. It's hard with that red line under there. It looks like a Y.
Yeah, I should just look at the Hebrew. It's easier. As the verse states, this is the burnt offering of each Rosh Chodesh in its renewal throughout the months of the year. Numbers 20.
That's from the Rosh Chodesh reading. Go ahead.
The Torah says, renew and bring the offering from renewal throughout the months of the year. The Torah says, renew and bring the offering from animals purchased with the new donation of half shekels collected that year.
Yeah, so that's how the rabbis are interpreting this, that we're supposed to bring the shekels we have to have new animals because the shekalim are used to pay for the public offerings. As they go on to say, go ahead, sorry.
And since in Nisan we must bring from the new donations, we
That should be we.
then advance the
No,
read.
we,
No,
sorry. We advance. Keep going.
we advance the reading of Shkalim, and they read it on the 1st of Adar, in order that the people will bring the half shekels to the temple.
Okay, so makdimim or kadminan vikarinan b'achad ba'adar. We why do we do it in the 1st of Adar? Because you have to have it at the 1st of Nisan. And to make sure the people know, you warn them in advance by a month. Which I wonder if it worked then any more than it does today. We send out notices about events, and like a month in advance, 2 weeks in advance, and people still don't know. And it's kind of funny. In my first congregation, a huge congregation of 1,300 families, there's only so many. We were sending out tons of mailings, and they said, "Why are you wasting so much money sending out all these mailings? Just send it out, less frequently, so twice a month at the bulletin and once during the month." And then people would complain, "How come we never know about these things?" So whatever. You try and find ways of letting people know. So that's why we announce on the Shkalim on the 1st of Adar, and now we read about the rest of the Arba Parshiot. Go on back in the Mishnah here, Carol, on the 2nd.
On the second Shabbat, that is, that immediately preceding Purim, we read the portion, "Remember what Amalek did," Deuteronomy 25, 17 to 19. On the 3rd Shabbat, the Para Adumah, Numbers 19. On the 4th, "This month, HaChodesh, shall be for you," in Exodus. On the 5th.
Yeah, before you go on, just so you know, again, that's where we get the names of the Parshiot. Not just Shkalim, but also Zachor Masha Salach Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you. And also Para Adumat Mima, pure red heifer for purification from the dead. It was very important to be in a state of ritual purity for the upcoming holiday of Pesach, to be able to bring the offerings in the temple. And then the announcement of Chodesh Hazel Lachem, Rosh Chodashim. This month shall be for you the first of the months. The month of Nisan is the first month, obviously announcing the upcoming holiday of Pesach, and the reading, which we read on Shabbat HaChodesh, is the law for the Pesach b'Mitzrayim and Pesach in Egypt, and then during the holiday we continue that chapter in our readings. Okay, and on the 5th, after these 4 special parshiot.
Back to normal.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol, on the 5th.
On the 5th, they resume the order.
In other words, the regular order of parshiot, back to normal, as Rabbi Zucker said.
For all special days, we interrupt the regular weekly order of readings on Roshei Chodeshim, on Hanukkah, and on Purim, on fast days, and on the non-priestly watches, and on Yom Kippur.
Okay, so there are actually, it's a little bit different what we do today, in that we generally just add maftir portions. So a regular Shabbat Hanukkah, we do the regular parasha plus the maftir for Hanukkah, or Purim never falls on Shabbat. But a ta'anit, a fast day, if it fell on a weekday, say a Monday or Thursday when we normally would read Torah, that parasha is supplemented by the special reading for the ta'anit, for the fast day, whether it's the regular reading for fast days or it's the reading for Tisha B'Av. And on Yom Kippur, obviously, if Yom Kippur falls on Shabbat, we just do the reading for Yom Kippur. There we completely eliminate it. Now, just so you know what the non-priestly watches are, one more section here, Carol, Ma'amadot, number 2 in the footnote.
Okay, Mamadot, we're gatherings by people in towns when their Kohanim would go to the temple. The people in the town would read from the beginning of Genesis and not from the regular Torah portion.
Yeah, so you had many Kohanim in Eretz Yisrael, and there were different mamadot, there were different cycles, Toranut, how do you translate that? Times that different Kohanim would come to serve in the Beit HaMikdash. And when a town's Kohanim were there serving in the Beit Mikdash, the town would acknowledge that, just in simple terms here, reading from the beginning of Genesis. So that's just explaining that. So much for the Mishnah and our practice of Arba Parshiot, the 4 special Parshiot, which are really quite special. Not only do we have a special Maftir portion, as we'll see, we have a special Haftarah, and there were also piyutim. There were liturgical poems that were written specifically for the Arba Parshiot. So, for example, if you want to see them, or selections from them, this is one of the many reasons why the Art Scroll Siddur is very helpful, because it has everything. And it includes these special piyutim. So not that I'm encouraging people to run out and buy an Art Scroll Siddur, but there's a lot of good material in there. Not my favorite Siddur, but it's useful. Okay, now would somebody like to go on? We go on to the companion volume to the Mishnah, the Tosefta. Now, these were traditions that were not included in the Mishnah. The text itself was probably edited after the Mishnah, although some of the traditions are earlier than the Mishnah. And it's all from that, general body of early rabbinic teachings that are contemporaneous with the Mishnah.
I'll read, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you, Ricky.
From where? When Rosh Chodesh or the Gemara?
Yes, when Rosh Chodesh Adar.
When Rosh Chodesh Adar occurs on Shabbat, we read the portion of Shkalim and conclude with the portion of Shkalim of Yehoyada HaKohen.
Yeah, so basically saying, this is what we read for our Haftarah, which is what we still do. Now there's some explanation of why we read this section, and this is part of a longer discussion about what portion do we actually read on Shkalim, and they just explain why this Haftarah is appropriate for Shkalim. Go ahead, down here, they raise an objection.
They raise an objection from Tosefta Megillah. When Rosh Chodesh Adar occurs on Shabbat, we read the portion of Shkalim and conclude with the portion of Shkalim of Yehoyada HaKohen. This is fine according to the one who said the Shkalim portion is when you take the count.
Yeah, that's the actual Maftir reading that we have on Shabbat, on Shabbat Shkalim. Ki tisa et rosh b'nei Yisrael lifkudehem v'natnu ish kofer nafsho. When you impose really a census tax on the people, they have to bring a machzita shekel. So that's what we know as the maftir portion. That wasn't always the case, apparently, but that's certainly the one that we follow. And so what they're saying is that this haftarah portion of Yehoyada HaKohen really matches the maftir reading from the Torah. So coming in, this is
the reason we read as the Haftarah Yehoyada the priest, because it is similar to the Torah reading as it is written, the money of his assessment of persons.
Yeah, so we have that line in the Haftarah, and it's very similar to the language of our parasha. In fact, we'll talk about why, what is the similarity between all of this language and what is the Haftarah talking about. So there we have the background for the fact that we have 4 special parshiot that precede Pesach and the order of how we read them. And so it goes way back to the period of the Mishnah. And as well, The Haftarah seems to be rather ancient, this particular Haftarah. So that's just the background. Now, let's actually get to our Haftarah from the book of Second Kings. And, obviously this is after the death of David and Solomon, the split of the kingdom. And, different kings are arising in the north. And there is some problem in the south. It's actually, like so many haftarot, it's kind of important to realize what mala mala min ha'inyan, what's really above all this, what's going on. And we'll come back to that when we see a kind of a parallel section in Chronicles. So, but right now we're going to concern ourselves just with this one look at our Haftarah. We'll come back to the background later. Okay, keep going. Please.
Jehoash was 7 years old when he became king. Jehoash began his reign in the 7th year of Jehu, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother's name was Zibiah of
Actually,
Beersheba.
Sivia, which name we know
of
today.
Beersheba. All his days, Jehoash did what was pleasing to Hashem, as the priest Jehoiada instructed him. The shrines, however, were not removed. The people continued to sacrifice and offer at the shrines.
Yeah, so one of the evaluations of the kings of Judah, the kings of the south, is one, how they behave toward God and God's rules, but also, how they related to the Beit HaMikdash. There's a sense, because the Book of Kings is edited pretty much by the same editor as Sefer Devarim, there's a desire for a centralization of worship. The one place to bring your offerings, the one place to worship was the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem. But there were also local shrines. We saw that in the period of the Judges. We saw that our patriarchs and matriarchs made shrines. And even in the period of the temple, after Solomon's temple was built, they kept up some of these local shrines. Of course, we know in the north, they made the 2 shrines in Dan and in Shomron. But certainly we're concerned mostly with the the kings of the south. Okay.
And even after the restoration, I did a study when I was in HUC in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
There were lots of other shrines. in Iraq, Amir, in the Transjordan, Tuvia had a shrine, and Lachish continued to be, and of course the Mikdash in On in late during the Maccabean period and later.
Yeah.
In Mitzrayim.
Right. And I have to, bringing up other religious sites, I have to, and I'll mention this on Shabbat, with sadness, the passing this week of one of our great scholars, conservative rabbi who taught most of his career in Israel, Bezalel Porton. He just passed away. And he was one of the great scholars on the community at Elephantine and studied the papyri there. So I just have to mention that with sadness. He was a wonderful guy. I didn't really know him well. He came to visit one of my classes at Brandeis to visit his friends, Nachum Sarna and Michael Fishbane. And together with them, he tore apart one of my papers in class, quite viciously, but actually quite correctly. He was 100% correct, I have to say. But I still really liked him. And it was also just a little bit of kind of funny that both Michael Fishbane and Bezalel Porton, their nicknames were Buzzy. So it was Buzzy Porton and Buzzy Fishbane. But, okay. So once again, to the Haftarah.
Yehoash said to the priests, all the money, current money, brought into the house of Hashem as sacred donations, any money that someone may pay as the money equivalent of persons, or any other money that someone may be minded to bring to the house of Hashem, let the priests receive
Pardon me.
each from his benefactor. They in turn shall make repairs on the house wherever damage may be found.
Okay, so Yehoash is looking at the temple and says, you know something? We got to take all this money. We got to use it for the repairs. As you can see in the Hebrew, Vehem yechazku et bedek habayit. Literally, they will strengthen the cracks in the house, and in fact, many of us are familiar with the notion in synagogues of a bedek habayit fund. Those were funds for the synagogue. And this is where the name comes from, Bedek Habayit. Now, we have to take a look at a little bit on the translation here. All the money, current money as it translated here, Kol Kesef HaKodashim, literally all the money of the donations or the sacred donations. Asher Yuva Beit Adonai, they translate here Kesef Over as current money. But Fishbane, in his commentary to JPS, points out that's not a good translation. So do you want to go on here?
Fishbane points out that the NJPS translation is incorrect. The first clause is a precise, though
Right.
elliptic, rendition of the phrase Kesef HaOver, al HaPikudim, the silver of those enrolled in the census.
Yeah, so elliptic means shortened or missing things. And he's just referring, he's pointing out correctly that this is an elliptic phrase for the line that we have in our Torah portion for shkalim. Go on.
And not a reference to current money or the like. It thus refers to Exodus 30:14. See the Maftu
Yeah,
portion.
never mind. I cut that out. Sorry.
Okay. And the poll price paid by all the males 20 years of age and up. It would best be translated silver of the census tax. It makes more sense. His commentary, based on those of Rashi and Radak, he also points out how the language of the Haftorah also reflects other biblical donations.
Yeah, and he brings in these examples, and we'll see that in the commentaries above of Rashi and Radak, as they very often contemporary Bible scholars are quite content to point out the correctness of the reading of our traditional Mefarshim. They knew the Bible. They often knew the Bible by heart, and they were able to make the connections and see the connections. And we have to realize, I've talked about this with Yehudi and with other people as well, that one of the great contributions that rabbis make to contemporary biblical scholarship, I think of so many rabbis that came out of JTS that went on to be Bible scholars, but from all the seminaries actually as well, from YU, from HUC, these rabbis knew our traditional Mefarshim, and they were able to bring in the incredible insights that anticipated much of contemporary biblical scholarship. So sometimes our traditional Mefarshim are really the best commentaries, or they're still among the best commentaries, no matter how much we may like modern.
Along that line, my teacher, Stanley Gewurz, wrote an article on Gid HaNasheh and sent it off to
Sciatic nerve, don't
publish.
eat.
Yeah, chapter 31, Genesis. And he sent it off to be published in the Hookah Annual. And 6 weeks later, he said, you know what? I didn't check what the Mefarshim have to say. So he looks, and even Ezra says, Zeha ever, straight up.
That's kind of funny. Ibn Ezra translated as a part of the body as opposed to a nerve, which is also a part of body, but this is more specific. But seriously, there are a lot of we just read last week, Lo tevashel gedi b'chalev imo, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Everyone, all the modern commentators love Rambam's commentary. Rambam looks at the context of the phrase in last week's Torah portion, and he sees that it's really within the context of ritual, and he assumes that this is an anti-pagan polemic. And everyone loves that. In a very kind of modern thinking commentary. However, no one has found any people that actually did this. So it's a great supposition, but we just haven't found anything that proved it. Okay, so let's take a look at what Rashi has to say about, understanding the words of our Haftarah. Kesef over, ish kesef nafshot erko.
The half shekel given by every male over 20, and donations representing the value of one's age. 2 types of monies are mentioned here. Everyone who passes the numbering, the first type, is the money of anyone who passes the numbering. That is the money of the annual shkalim, about which it is stated. And the second type is anyone who volunteers his own value, that is, one who says, my value shall be incumbent upon me to donate.
Yeah, as Fishbane points out, that's from the end of the book of Leviticus, talking about donations one may make and, how to donate one's value.
Matot. Matot. Parashat Matot.
Right.
Numbers.
No, it's also Vayikra.
Matot.
It's also Vayikra.
Yeah, but you have it also in Matot.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Evaluations.
Right, but here he says that's right. But specifically here, Daber al bnei Israel ve'amarta alehem, you will speak to the children of Israel, saying to them, Ish ki yafli neder be'erkecha nefashot ladonai. When any party explicitly vows to Adonai, the equivalent for a human being. So it's just the specific language. So Rashi already picks up that the language of the Haftarah, this current money stuff, is that, it's very clear that these are references, at least the Haftarah, are very clearly references to earlier biblical text. And then he goes on. This is Rashi again. Go ahead.
All
Rick.
monies that a person's heart inspires him, etc. For example, one who says, I obligate myself to donate a maneh for making repairs to the temple.
Yeah. So Rashi clearly points out that this is language that's reflected within the Torah, within the laws of the Torah. And one may very well say, okay, that's not a shock that this is what Yehoash would want to have happen. And now we see Radak's commentary. It's rather lengthy. You want to keep going, Ricky?
Okay. Sacred donations.
That's how I translated Kol Kesef HaKodashim, literally the silver or the money of the Kodashim, the holy things. I would say I'm just translating as sacred donations. I don't know if that's the best translation.
It says in Chronicles, afterward, Yoash decided to renovate the house of Hashem because it needed repair, and it gives there the reason. For the children of the wicked Atalia had violated the house of God and had even used the sacred things of the house of Hashem for the Baals. Therefore, it needed repair. Were it not for this, the building would still be standing. For from the day the temple was built until Yoash examined it was only 155 years. And a building as strong as this building would stand even longer had Atalia and her sons from another man not violated it.
Okay, so basically there were specific events that caused damage to the temple. It was not just ongoing use, as Radak assumes that such a magnificent building would continue to stand. And indeed, we have buildings that have been standing for quite some time. I mean, what's kind of remarkable is when you go into the pyramids in Egypt and see that the paint, some of the paint in the wall paintings in the pyramids, the colors are still there. I mean, it doesn't happen here in the United States, even when you hire a really good painter inside the house, so it's just amazing. But now we have to understand, what are these events? Who is Atalia? And for here, sorry, I have to move up here. We have to take a look at Chronicles, which adds a little bit more to the story. Also, actually going to go a little bit before. Well, basically, you have an evil queen, Atalia, Ahaziah's mother. Was first of all, you could see here when Atalia, Ahaziah's mother, learned that her son was dead, she promptly did away with all who were of the royal stock of the house of Judah. But Yehoshabat, I got to look at the Hebrew here. Yehoshabat, daughter of the king, spirited away Ahaziah's son Joash from among the princes who were being slain and put him and his nurse in a bedroom. She kept him hidden. He's hidden for 6 years, hidden in the house of God when Natalia reigned over the land. That's why he takes over at 7, because then Yehoiada, the priest, Yehoiada took courage and brought the chiefs of the hundreds, Azariah, son of Yerovam, Yishmael, etc., and he leads a coup against Atalia, who is eventually
You have to
killed.
also remember that Atalia was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel.
Right. Sorry. Thank you.
That gives a little more context.
Yeah, Ahab and
Who she
Jezebel,
was.
remember. Ahab, Achav, and Jezebel were king and queen in the northern kingdom. And the major opponent of Achav, of course, was Eliyahu, who challenged him on numerous occasions. And, of course, slaughtered the prophets of Baal who were brought in by Jezebel. That's where we get the name. She's a Jezebel, that terrible insult to a woman. And sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And she was not absolutely so, here this is Chronicles. Let her not be put to death in the house of the Lord. They cleared a passage for her. She came to the entrance of the horse gate to the royal palace. There she was put to death. So, so then Yehoiada solemnized a covenant between himself and the people, and he sets up Yehoash. So let's read a little bit. It sounds a little bit like our Haftarah, but it's a little bit different because we have some more of this information. Ricky, would you continue?
Jehoash was 7 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother's name was Zebiah of Beersheba. All the days of the priest Jehoiada, Jehoash
Yehoash.
did what was pleasing to the Lord. Jehoiada took 2 wives for him, by whom he had sons and daughters.
Okay, a little bit of more information there. And go ahead.
After Joash
Afterward.
decided to renovate the house of the Lord, he assembled the priests and the Levites and charged them as follows: go out to the towns of Yehuda and collect money from all Israel for the annual repair of the house of your God. Do it quickly. But the Levites did not act quickly. The king summoned Jehoiada, the chief, and said to him, why have you not seen to it that the Levites brought the tax imposed by Moses, the servant of the Lord, and the congregation of Israel from Judah and Jerusalem to the tent of the pact? The children of the wicked Atalia had violated the house of God and had even used the sacred things of the house of the Lord for the Baals.
Okay, we don't have to go on. That's just the story in Chronicles, which adds some of the information that we don't necessarily have in our Haftarah. The relationship between Sefer Malachim and Divrei Yamim is very interesting. But just wanted to point out that Radak is drawing on the two narratives to kind of fill in and understand what in particular motivated Yehoash to repair the temple, that it was not just simple repairs and maintenance, but there was, in fact, there were serious breaches and damage done to the temple by Atalia and her sons, and therefore there was a definite need to make these repairs. Okay, go on with Radak here. Does anybody else want to continue, by the way?
Anybody else?
I can read,
Okay, thank you, Maddie.
maybe. It was necessary. It was necessary to collect Israel's sacred donations, for they would dedicate shkalim, voluntary sacred donations, and dedications that were in the temple. As it says in Chronicles, that Atalia and her sons used most of the sacred things of the house of Hashem for the Baals, and what was left, Yehoash did not want to remove from the building because he did not want to leave the treasury of God empty.
Sorry.
Yeah, leave the treasury of God empty. And he thought that he would make it up from the external donations.
Okay, so again, there's a specific reason why he wants to do this and why he's doing it the way he's doing it, because, you know, you don't want to totally leave the temple treasury empty, and but you really need to restore it. Then we need it for the Bedek HaBayit, for all the different elements that are used in the temple. Go ahead.
Therefore, he said to the Kohanim that they should gather all the money that is brought into the temple. He also proclaimed regarding the shkalim that they should be brought, as it is said in Chronicles. A proclamation was issued in Judah and Jerusalem to bring the tax imposed on Israel in the wilderness by Moses, the servant of God.
Yeah. So again, he's going to be connecting it to the Torah portion that we read for shkalim, as he explains what is the tax imposed on Israel in the wilderness. Okay, go on.
The tax imposed by Moshe are the shkalim. They are called misat because when you take up tisa, the head count of the Israelites.
Yeah, same word. Kitisat Rosh Bnei Yisrael, when you take a head count of the Israelites, and when you want to talk about the imposition that Moshe places on the people, it's misat Moshe, so it's the same word. So already Radak is recognizing connections. Go on.
There are three monies mentioned here. Silver of the census tax is the half shekel.
Yeah, I'm using the translation of Fishbane, not the new JPS, current money. Go ahead.
As it is said, everyone who goes through the counting.
Kol ha'over al pkudim. You know, over is also a word that's used there. So Radak recognizes that's, you know, the reference to what becomes the Maftir reading for Shkalim is very clearly that language is reflected in the language of our Haftarah. Go on.
Money that someone may pay as the money equivalent of persons. This is one who says, my value shall be incumbent upon me to donate, or the money equivalent of so-and-so shall be incumbent upon me.
Okay, so again, we saw that reflects the language of Leviticus and as well Bamidbar. And finally,
that a person's heart inspires him is what one desires to contribute to the repair of the temple, as in Targum Yonatan on the verse, all sacred donations that are brought up to the temple, etc.
Yeah, so he's just making a reference to the Aramaic translation of the latter part of the Bible. We have various Targumic traditions, various Aramaic translations of the Bible. The one on the Torah is Unclus. Traditionally, Unclus was a ger, a proselyte, and that's kind of like the standard Targum on the Torah. But we have other Targumim as well. and there's Targum Yonatan on the prophets. Actually, the Targumic studies, it's because sometimes, as we've talked about before, the Targum can be a fairly literal translation of the Hebrew. Other times, it's filled with midrashic references or quoting entire midrashim. So you can look at a verse in the Torah and one of the Targumic traditions, and oh my God, why are there 5 lines in the Targum for 1 line in the Torah? It's because they add quite quite a lot, and again, there are all kinds of fascinating elements. There's a very famous Targum that was found in the Vatican, called the Neofiti manuscript. And what's interesting about that one is that the Neofiti manuscript actually had a number of Targumic traditions. You had the actual Targum Neofiti, as it's called, but then there were marginal notes in between the lines and also in the shulayim, in the margins. And each of those sets of notes reflect other Targumic traditions. So there was clearly a huge Targumic traditions of Aramaic translations that come from well before the Common Era and continuing afterwards. So it's a very for biblical scholars, this is very, very important in studying the Bible. And very often Rashi, for example, quotes the Targum, generally Onkelos. And you have in many Chumashim the printing of the Torah with Rashi's commentary and Targum Onkelos. And in the Mikrot Gedolot, the wider rabbinic Bible that includes not just Rashi, but Ibn Ezra and Ramban and other commentaries, they often include a number of the Targumim as well. So that's just, why Radak is quoting it. But again, he's recognizing that the language of the Haftarah is simply referring to these different traditions about donations to the Beit HaMikdash. Now, problem is, of course, they've got to get the donation. So here's how they deal with it. Let's go back to the Haftarah finally.
But in the 23rd year of King Yehoash, it was found that the priests had not made the repairs on the house.
A longer time than is mentioned in Divrei Yamim, in Chronicles.
So King Yehoash summoned the priest Jehoiada. You
have to read it in the Hebrew.
And the other priests, and said to them, "Why have you not kept the house in repair? Now do not accept money from your benefactors anymore, but have it donated for the repair of the house." The priests agreed that they would neither accept money from the people nor make repairs on the house.
And now here's how they're going to collect it.
And the priest Jehoiada took a chest and bored a hole in its lid. He placed it at the right side of the altar as one entered the house of Hashem. And the priestly guards of the threshold deposited there all the money that was brought into the house of Hashem. A tzedakah box.
B'diuk, exactly.
Whenever they saw that there was much money in the chest, the royal scribe and the high priest would come up and put the money accumulated in the house of Hashem into bags, and they would count it. Then they would deliver the money that was weighed out to the overseers of the work, who were in charge of the house of Hashem. These, in turn, used to pay the carpenters and the laborers who worked on the house of Hashem, and the masons and the stonecutters.
So you had an overall contractor who farmed it out to specialists. Subcontractors is not an unfamiliar situation.
They also paid for wood and for quarried stone with which to make the repairs on the house of Hashem, and for every other expenditure that had to be made in repairing the house.
Okay, so that's how contractors, subcontractors, how they collected the money, how now the Kohanim were responsible for making sure that the money was collected and counted. But a little bit more detail
However, no silver bowls and no snuffers, basins, or trumpets, no vessels of gold or silver were made at the house of Hashem from the money brought to the house of Hashem. This was given only to the overseers of the work for the repair of the house of Hashem. No check was kept on those to whom the money was delivered to pay the workers, for they dealt honestly. Money brought as a reparation offering or as a purgation
Purification.
offering
Offering.
was not deposited in the house of Hashem. It went to the priests.
Yeah, remember there were a number of donations that were supposed to, particularly the animals, the food that went, and the grain, etc., that went specifically to the priests, the Kohanim. Also, there were donations that were brought in for the Leviim, so that there were indeed things that went directly to the priests. Of course, for the Marxists, this is the one of the critiques against religion, that the priests are only about raising money for themselves. And, probably at various times this was abused. Certainly we know in the church itself, for their priests, in the Middle Ages, there was a great deal of it. And we have to say that even as the temple was restored following the Babylonian exile and with the rise of the Hasmonean kingdom, yeah, the some of the later Hasmonean kings who also took on upon themselves the priesthood, and then eventually the priesthood was basically bought and sold from the Romans. There was a great deal of corruption going on, and as we've also talked about, there were a lot of monies. There were donations that were made, for, as you can see, the repair of the temple, donations that were made for the public offerings. There was money that had to be changed as people came in from other places, other countries. People, of course, couldn't necessarily schlep their animals to be offered, so they had to buy the offerings there. And when Jesus upends the tables of the moneylenders in the temple, yeah, well, that was just part of the regular business. It wasn't necessarily corrupt, though there was a great deal of corruption, but they were necessary. Not unlike well, not the same today, but
And it's a mistranslation in the temple because it wasn't, it was next
Right.
to the temple.
Thank you. Yeah,
Around the sides, basically where Robinson's Arch and all that, where the prayer areas are today at the Kotel, and
Right.
on to the south a little bit.
So, there was, and there were, this was all part of the ancient economy as well. We have to remember that you had pilgrims coming to the Beit HaMikdash, literally from around the world, because already in Second Temple times there is a diaspora, and people also coming from all over Israel, and even one of the masrot, one of the tithes, was something that had to be used in Yerushalayim. It was meant to benefit the temple, the economy in Jerusalem. So this was all tied into the economy. And sometimes we read this and like, oh, this is not the most exciting part of the Torah or the Tanakh, but it gives us insight into what was going on. And today we have Beta Kabayit funds. People don't always recognize what it takes to run a synagogue. I mean, really, to maintain a building, to pay maintenance, let alone rabbis, cantors, educators, whatever, but also office staff. It's a lot. I remember, this is going back a few years, when my one of my brothers-in-law was president of our shul back in Wilkes-Barre, and one of my other brothers-in-law was on the board at his shul in Chicago. And we talked about the fact that if you really want to depend on membership dues, most synagogues would have to charge a minimum of $2,500 a person, not a family, $2,500 a person to begin to match some of the costs of a modern synagogue. And we all think of synagogues and how they functioned 50 years ago or 70 years ago, and that's just not the case today. Our economy has changed drastically. Not we can think of here in White Meadow, the socioeconomic status of our congregation was much higher, probably 25, 30 years ago. And even a lot of people today who may be well off and, often make some wonderful donations to our synagogue. And, I think there are a lot of very generous people in our congregation. I'm not denying that for a moment. And it's very important that we know that. Um, but, we just don't have the resources we once did.
But
And
we had 3 times as many
well, we also
congregants.
had many members, but even synagogues that were larger, when you have my synagogue in Kansas City, I said it was about 1,300 families when I was there. It's probably down, I would guess, under 1,000, maybe 900, 800. And even some of the major synagogues in Philadelphia, for example, they also have shrunk considerably. And those are just two cities. I mean, this is true for congregations across the country. And I have to say, it's not just Jewish institutions. It's also Christian institutions and Muslim institutions. I mean, I can, think of the Catholic Church, though I don't necessarily have a great deal of sympathy for them. But they've had enough controversies and crises, and that so many churches have been closed, and so many dioceses have had to merge churches and schools, and very, very hard for congregations. But we can't always assume that the money comes in, that synagogues are somehow magically preserved by donors. Sometimes they are. I mean, there are congregations that have, significant donors, and they make a real difference, but that's not always the case anymore. And economics still plays an important part. We see it as we read the stories in Tanakh and subsequently, and so too, it's still very much something that we think about today. And yes, buildings may last a long time, but when we think of our building, for example, uh, it's now not such it's an older building, and though most of it is in good shape, when it comes to air conditioning and heating systems, they break down. And as well, physical plants. I mean, you can think of our parking lot or our driveway going in. There's just a lot that we've had problems with leaks, etc. In fact, one of the most famous shuls in Philadelphia, I've mentioned this one before, Beth Shalom in Elkins Park, which was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, a remarkable structure, designed really when they wanted to make synagogues really into kind of JCCs. And the synagogue has a pool, and they closed it, but it had a pool. But Beth Shalom, even though it's one of the most famous synagogues, was mostly known for the fact that its roof leaked. I mean, I remember speaking to a Reform rabbi. I said, "Oh, when I was looking for a job, I did interview there, and I said, I've interviewed a congregation I know well, not Harzain, Beth Shalom," and she said, "Oh, their roof leaks." It's just one of those things. So, but as we come to Parashat Shkalim, we're not looking at all the homiletical stuff. There's a wealth of material on donations, how people should donate, what needs to be donated, about charity, about generosity. A lot of beautiful materials. As dry as some of this material is, there's a lot of very beautiful other materials, particularly on the parasha. So this week, We hope you'll join us for the remarkable experience of 3 Sifrei Torah, and a little longer, but kind of cool, and some interesting materials as let not we get too nervous, but we're getting close to Pesach. So, yeah. So, daraba lechulam. Thank you all.
you, Rabbi.
Thank
Yehuda,
you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
granddaughter's wedding.
Pardon me? Oh, yes.
Wishing
Yes.
you a mazel tov on his granddaughter's wedding.
Yes, that's very exciting.
Did it happen already?
Oh, he's not even there.
Oh, yeah. I'll find out. I think it did.
Well, we just received a
Right. He just told me, and then the notice went out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that very exciting, to just smachot. That's especially after this week.
Amen
The
v'amen.
Jewish people needs a lot of simcha.
All
right.
right. Stay on for just a second.
Okay.
Thank
right.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom lekulam.
Yep.
Do you have any candidates for as Jews by choice?
No. I have
Okay.
candidates, but they just started the process. They're halfway through the class with Rabbi Nesson. I've got a couple. And we have someone who's actually on the Zoom, but he hasn't officially started yet. He will start with Rabbi Nesson in the fall with the next class.
Right. I've got somebody who's actually finished, but I'm giving him a little extra stuff. If you might be available sometime in mid-March, after Purim,
Yeah, I should
so
be.
we could do a Beit Din. He's very conscientious. His father is Jewish, mother was not, but he's very conscientious, and he's been making it to synagogue and finished all his classes, and very,
Great.
very lovely fellow. So we'll check also whether Mark is available, and probably towards the end, before April.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds
Before
good.
Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
There you go. Exactly.
All right,
We
everybody
want
is well.
a dar document.
Yeah. So
Good.
you're doing well, congregation doing okay, your
Yeah,
family,
yeah,
everyone.
everyone's well. Baruch Hashem.
Thank God.
Everyone's well. We
Always good
Elaine
seeing
and I
you.
had colds last week, but we're fine. I
Yeah,
was
so did
actually
I.
out skiing.
All
Yeah,
right.
good.
Wonderful.
And everybody's good by you?
Oh yeah, we're all great. Please give my
Good.
regards to Elena, and it's always great seeing you.
Same here. Thank you.
All right, Kol Tuv.
Lehi Kol Tuv. Bye-bye.
All right, what's going on here? Why am I not? Why is this not? Okay, there we go.